concerned about this drop that we've seen in gold?
Well, I'm concerned about the erraticness of the dollar. The dollar's up, the dollar's down. We print a lot of dollars, the dollar gets devalued. That's really the concern. Now, if people think that the gold price up and down is a reflection of something wrong with gold, no, I say it's something wrong with the dollar. Because people have been expressing a concern here these last couple months about gold, but compared to what? Compared to where gold went from when the Fed took over, when it was $20 an ounce?
Yeah,
compared to what has happened in the past?
Yeah, but it's not necessarily. We have to talk about the stability here. To see a drop, the sharpest drop in 30 years, that actually makes the dollar's price activity recently look a little bit stable.
Well, in a relative sense, that might be the case, but that's the way markets work. I remember in the 70s when they finally allowed people to own gold, it went from $35 up to $200 rather rapidly. Then it lost 50%. You know, then it went on to go up to $800. So to compare a couple months or a couple weeks and forget about a bull market in the gold price in relation to the dollar for 12 years. So I would say the comparison is not, not an authentic comparison. What you have to look at is the inflation. Inflation is when it increases the supply of money. And since '08, they have quadrupled the supply of Federal Reserve credit, and they're buying $85 billion a month of Treasury bills. At the same time, last week, they bought $60 billion. That's the inflation. That's the distortion of market, and that's why we're not getting economic growth.
We're seeing the opposite of inflation now.
Well, it depends on how you define it. Inflation is when you increase the supply of money, bond prices go up, stocks are going up, housing prices are starting to go back up again, education costs are going up, but the gross distortion is the effect that the inflation of the money does on the price of money and the interest rates and how it causes economic problems and why you don't get economic growth. So you have to look at the malinvestment and the destruction that occurs when you mess around with the price of money. So it's not just the CPI, because the CPI isn't reliable. The government fudges that as well. They change the way they measure it. The free market economists say the CPI is going up about 8%. So it's a lot of deception going on out there. And just talk to somebody on retirement getting Social Security. They are not happy with the purchasing power of the dollar, and you can't tell them there's no inflation.
Dr. Paul, let's go back to gold for a moment, because stability, talking about the price stability helps to build confidence. Confidence in paper money, and certainly confidence in hard assets. With all the speculative money that went into gold on the way up and came out of gold on the recent plunge, how do you know what the real value of gold is?
Well, nobody knows it other than what is happening at that moment, because the supply and demand of gold is very important. That's why it is money, because gold is used elsewhere and it is a commodity. But the supply and money of paper is the culprit. That's the one that is causing all the trouble. But people ignore the supply and demand of paper. Yes, paper goes up and paper goes down, but look at the long-term purchasing power of the dollar. It's been devastating. And believe me, at the rate they're printing the money, you're going to see a continual devastation of the value of the dollar, and you're not going to see economic growth until you liquidate the debt and liquidate the malinvestment out there. Sure, you're going to see housing go back up again, but you're going to see more bubble formation, because prices go up doesn't mean there's economic growth. So we're a long way from the correction, mainly because they ignore the definition of inflation, and they ignore the need to liquidate debt and the need to liquidate and get rid of all the malinvestment, and this watching the stock market. Look, one good comparison would be, look at the price of stocks in gold. Although in the last couple of weeks it's changed a bit, but the price of the stock market has crashed, because you used to be able to buy the Dow with 44 ounces of gold. Now it's under 10 ounces of gold. It's probably going to go a lot lower.
Dr. Paul, how can we talk about the risk of a correction in financial assets? That's what you were just discussing, the likelihood that the Fed may be creating a bubble through quantitative easing and low interest rates and priming the markets for a crash, when we've just seen something similar happen in gold. There was a correction in the gold price. We're pressing you on this issue because we need you to reconcile the two. We see the characteristics that you apply to financial assets playing themselves out in hard assets, and it's tough to understand. We want you to share with us your views.
Yeah, but no. Well, I think the way gold's acting acts like a market does. You know, you get ahead of itself. There has to be correction. The amazing thing isn't the correction. The amazing thing is the biggest bull market of the century, when one commodity went up for 12 years straight. So you can't ignore that. But to say, well, there has to be an adjustment, because prices are subjectively decided by many, many factors. So you can't predict exactly where this money's going to go. Unfortunately, the money right now that the Fed creates goes into reserves, further distorting the market, further pumping up the prices of bonds, further building a bubble that will burst, because our economic growth isn't there, and we're in every bit as much trouble as Europe and as Greece. So someday there'll be a lack of confidence in our dollar, and then you're going to see the correction in the paper a lot more severe than you see the correction in the dollar-gold ratio.
I'm curious, you don't like the dollar, you don't like the Federal Reserve and other paper fiat currencies. What do you think about Bitcoin, the virtual currency that's not backed by governments or central banks?
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth, it's a little bit too complicated. If it's complicated to understand, and I've been studying money for a long time, if I can't put it in my pocket, I have some reservations about that. But it's been designed in the free market, and if it's a means of exchange, it would not ever be illegal, and you shouldn't regulate it in the free market. But I don't think it fits the definition of money, which has been around for about 6,000 years. People want to see something, they can know what it is, they can define it, they can touch it, they can put it in their pocket. And a Bitcoin, if you don't have a computer and somebody running the computer and the calculations, you know, you don't have it. So I'm not a big supporter of that, but I'm not opposed to it, and I admit I don't fully understand exactly what's going on with it.
So you're sticking to the hard stuff. Just wondering if you're looking at this price drop in gold as a buying opportunity. I know you also have your own portfolio of gold.
Oh, yeah, this is the time people buy. I mean, if you look at it these last few weeks, there were some pictures in the paper that were astounding. I think it was in Thailand or someplace. It was a jewelry gold shop, and they were lined up 6 rows deep, hundreds and hundreds of people buying. They're running out of silver coins right now. I bought, you know, recently, too, because I don't like to buy when there's a lot of energy, you know, with pushing them up. I want to see a correction. So yes, the people who believe it is, and this is very healthy for the economy, because the speculators, the people who are in it and trading from minute to minute, they're weak holders of gold. They don't believe in gold, but they believe in helping to set the market, and they have a function to play. But the people who really believe in it are buying now, and literally it was in the commodities markets that shook this thing out. It wasn't in the hard assets. There was one person that dumped 53,000 contracts in one sale. Right. So there's some finagling going on there, I believe.
Well, yeah, the speculative play. All right. Well, Dr. Paul, you are a believer, always opinionated. We want you to stay with us from Clue, Texas today for your thoughts on a potential historic fix to our nation's immigration laws and gun control on Market Makers on Bloomberg Television. Back in 2.